Good morning everyone, I'm Benches Di Baguio and today we will be gonna tackle about chapter 13 since we were done with chapter 12. From king to democracy. The history of Europe showed that the kings were originally outranked because of the two set of rivals, feudal nobles and the Roman Pope. But eventually, the king rose to the top because of the help of the newly rich merchants for the middle class.
Draw translations of modern state went through the following stages: the Middle Ages, where the church was supreme; the Feudal Age, where the nobles were dominant; the Age of Kings, where the king were powerful; the Age of Revolution, where the modern states took shape; the Age of Imperialism, when king and parliament built overseas colonies; and the Age of Democracy, when people preferred freedom and limited government.
The Golden Age of Spain. So, Spain, kilala bilang Spain Siglo de Oro o Golden Century. It had the mightiest and richest empire. It is in this period it is flourishing in art and literature of Spain, coinciding with the politicians of the Spaniard Empire. During sa pamumuno ni King Philip, the Spain was the very most powerful country in the world. During this age, peace and harmony prevailed to that people do not have to work to feed themselves, but for the earth provided food in abundance.
So we have here a very important person in his lesson, Philip II of Spain. At 19, his son Philip ascended the throne. His inheritance was still vast. It recovered Spain, the Netherlands, the Milan, the Naples, the Sicily, and the Spanish colonies in the American and Asia. During his pamumuno, Spain became the most powerful nations in Europe. Spanish Philip. This person, Philip, ruled as an absolute monarch. He watched over everything. And he trusted no one. He was a deeply religious person. He believed that his right to rule come from God. Therefore, he ruled with a high sense of duty and justice. Although an absolute ruler, he was humble and not arrogant. But he was strict and highly disciplined. Philip believed that his mission in life was to fight infidels and restore the unity of Catholic Church. He made more successful than his father did. He recovered Protestant land previously lost, like East Germany, Eastern Europe, and Netherlands. Yet he sealed the defeat with Pope made him a mortal enemy of Protestant and non-Catholic everywhere. He referred the institutions, witches, tortures, temerious, suspects, and real. He was especially fond of the Philippines because it was named after him. It was also because of his islands. Philip was able to say, "The sun never set on my empire." Then the colony provided the lost pilgrims to the Asian missionaries. He would never give up. That's it. Island Filipinas, even he had to spend all the riches of his empire to hold it. So therefore, during this time, Philip II is considered as the greatest sovereign in the history of Spain in terms of leading global explorations and colonial expansion. During his pamumuno, Philip II reached the heights of its influence and power and remained firmly Roman Catholic.
So, good afternoon everyone, I am Dacilio Cherry and Mylan, and I will be continuing the report of Mr. Di Baguio about the chapter 13, The Age of Kings. So, the origin of France. In the Middle Ages, Charlemagne's weak hires divided the Carolingian kingdom of the Franks. In 987, they proclaimed the Duke of Paris, Hugh Capet, as the new king of France. So, France wins the 100 Years' War. Joan of Arc from Lorraine, France, became the nation's savior. At 17, she offered her services to the Dauphin, or French crown prince, who desperately agreed to her plan. The victorious Joan of Arc was hailed as the Maid of Orleans. The effects of the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War finally ended in 1454 with the victory of the France. Its results were as follows. First, France regained almost all territories lost to England. Second, the French feudal nobles and knights were wiped out in the battlefields of the war. Third, the French monarchy emerged stronger than before. Fourth, French nationalism was awakened due to the masterdom of Joan of Arc and the French victories over the English invaders. And the last one is the long hostility and suspicion between the French and English peoples spilled over into many other wars, even when they were allies. Cardinal Richelieu policies. Cardinal Richelieu, 1624 to 1642, became a regent of the new Bourbon king, Louis XII. He became the single most powerful personality in Europe. His strong policies helped the Bourbon kings of France become the most powerful monarchs in Europe. The 72-year reign of Louis XIV was the longest in medieval history, and France emerged as the greatest power in Europe. So great was the impact on Europe of his personality and achievements that the second half of the 1600s is sometimes called the Age of Louis XIV. Now let's move to the collapse of France. The collapse of France came from the kings themselves. Absolute power corrupted them absolutely, and the dynasty of Louis and his successors were hated in France and Spain. Their extravagant lifestyles, expensive parties, and foreign wars drained the country of human and financial resources. Now let's move to Britain, the mother of parliaments. Today, Britain is known as the mother of parliament and the cradle of parliamentary democracy. England under the Tudors. Little England became a strong and powerful nation under the Tudor kings, Henry and his daughter Elizabeth. Britain, the world's greatest power in the 18th century. By the 18th century, Britain became the world's greatest power. It had developed a strong Christian society, a limited monarchy, a strong parliament, and a vast colonial empire. The Union of Great Britain and Ireland in 1801 formed a new state called the United Kingdom. However, we will continue to refer to it simply as Britain. Britain acquired territories in all parts of the world by victory in various wars. The War of Spanish Succession in 1801, War of Austrian Succession in 1740, and the Seven Years' War in 1756 to 1763. Its powerful navy, with a splendid record since the destruction of the Spanish Armada, maintained its prestige as mistress of the seas. Britain ruled the world seas until the Second World War. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Britain became the greatest colonial power, acquiring India, the West Indies, Australia, New Zealand, and colonies in Africa.
The tyranny of King Philip II of Spain, who had inherited the Low Countries, led to bitter struggles with his subject there. The Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg are the Low Countries. Since the Middle Age, their coastal areas had been thriving center of trade and commerce due to the industriousness of the people. Many cities had won their charters of freedom. The wool industry made the cities of Bruges and Jan prosperous. Amsterdam were by trading sports. In July 16, 1581, the entire Low Country Protestant united and declared their independence. Dutch merchants refused any aristocracy or royalty. All little of nobility were displaced. Instead, they often followed the classical Roman types of government, the Republic, where all citizens were equal and elected their government representatives for a limited time. Dutch philosopher Desiderius Erasmus became the prince of humanists, who rigorously laid down the foundation of internal law in his book, The Law of War and Peace. Jewish Dutch philosopher taught that everything in nature, even evil, was part of God's divine plan. Antonio van Leeuwenhoek improved the microscope and discovered bacteria. Christian Huygens invented the pocket watch and the wristwatch watch, thus revolutionizing the time industry. And all of that people was the Dutch scientist.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Linda John Rose, and I will be going to continue our report, which is the despots in Eastern Europe. So, Austro-Hungarian Empire. Austria-Hungary, from the word Austria-Hungary, it is Austro-Hungarian, often referred to as Austro-Hungarian Empire of the dual monarchy, was a constitutional monarchy and multinational state in Central Europe between 1867 and 1918. So, the Habsburg Austrian rulers were tyrants. They are called tyrants. They made the empire a Catholic stronghold and dominated quarrelsome lesser nobles. Absolute power was the only option to keep the empire from crumbling. The height of absolutism in the Austro-Hungarian came during the reign of Maria Theresa and her son Joseph II. So under the beautiful but high-strung Empress Maria Theresa, the army was formed, the church power were limited, and education for the nobles were improved. Maria Theresa helped to divide Poland between Russia and Prussia. She did so with regret, but it was said of her, she weeps, but she takes her share. Her son Joseph tried to continue his mother's reform, but most of his plans ended in failure. He met death in foreign wars, antagonized his people, and the proud Hungarians. He rose also as a dictator, not caring for the welfare of the people. And the aptly named balance of power in Europe was a system that aimed to maintain international order and peace by following any increase in strength of one nation state with an increase in strength of his geographic or political enemy. Enlightened despotism, also called benevolent despotism, form of government in the 18th century in which absolute monarchs pursued legal, social, and educational reforms inspired by the Enlightenment. And among the most prominent enlightened despots were first is Frederick II, and then Peter I the Great, Catherine II the Great, Maria Theresa, which I said earlier, and his son Joseph II, and Leopold II. They typically instituted administrative reform, religious toleration, and economic development, but did not propose reforms that would undermine their sovereignty and disrupt the social order. So that's all for our report. Thank you and God bless.